The United States is a country that prides itself on a strong military force, but understands that all the weapons and vehicles in the world would be useless without the brave men and women who sacrifice so much to operate them. Many countries around the world recognize these sacrifices in November of each year through days like Veterans Day in the United States, Remembrance Day in the UK and Canada, and Armistice Day in France. But several countries, including South Korea, New Zealand, and Australia, have a second day out of the year to commemorate the memory of servicemen and women who have given their lives in service to their countries. In the US, we call this holiday Memorial Day. We take a 3-day weekend to spend time with our families and give thanks for the freedoms we can only enjoy because others before us died for them. For many families, part of your Memorial Day traditions will undoubtedly include watching war movies. And indeed, most television programming will oblige this by playing every war movie and television show they have the right to. With so many options out there and so little time, Fairly Critical has put together a list for you. But before we get going, we do have a disclaimer for those of you watching outside of the US. Since this is a holiday specific to our country, we are going to focus on movies that pay respect to the death of those in the US Armed Forces. We do plan on doing another list this coming November though, and that list will include movies that showcase the military service of our allies as well. We do hope you can understand our reasoning for that. But without further ado, I am your host Jacob, and these are 12 movies to watch this Memorial Day in the order in which you should watch them. Number 1, Glory. 1989's Glory is the brilliant story of the all-black 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first all-black volunteer regiment in the Union's history. Starring Matthew Broderick, Morgan Freeman, and Denzel Washington, the movie depicts the training the men went through, the prejudice they faced from fellow soldiers, and the hard fighting and dying they did during the war. Denzel Washington received his first Oscar for his performance in this movie, and the performances from Broderick and Freeman are also nothing short of perfection. Watch this movie first to understand that heroes of all ethnicities have existed in this country for generations. Number 2, The Lost Battalion. You would be forgiven if you have never seen 2001's The Lost Battalion, since it was an A&E Network original film that never received a theatrical release. Starring Rick Schroeder, the film depicts the real-life struggle of an American unit that gets cut off and surrounded in 1918. Of the 554 men that went on the offensive, 197 are killed in action, and 150 either go missing or are taken prisoner as they battle the German infantry, stormtroopers, and even friendly artillery for 6 days before 194 of them are eventually rescued by advancing American troops. While it is not a perfect movie by any means, it does show the negative effects of friendly fire, callous senior command decisions, and poor logistics, and it can be streamed on Amazon Prime. Number 3, Saving Private Ryan. If you wanted proof that this is not a rankings video, well, here Saving Private Ryan is as the third movie. What more can I say about this film that hasn't been said for the last 25 years? It is literally a movie about a soldier who survived World War II and is remembering the men who died so that he could make it home. If I don't include it on this list, then I need to shut my channel down, and since the following few entries will be set in World War II, it is the perfect movie to start out this era of warfare with. Number 4, Fury. 2014's Fury is a movie that sticks with you for a long time after you watch it. Featuring an all-star cast and performances from Brad Pitt, Logan Lerman, Shia LaBeouf, Michael Pena, and Jon Bernthal, this movie depicts the unspeakable violence and gore of warfare. But it is the quieter moments where the tank crew must reconcile with what they have experienced, as well as the actions they have taken, that this movie really gets under your skin. An interesting comparison can be drawn between Matt Damon's character in Saving Private Ryan and Logan Lerman's character from Fury, as both will have to live on past the horrors of their respective endings. Number 5, Midway. While the Battle of Midway was most recently portrayed in 2019's film of the same name, I recommend watching the original depiction as it focuses more on the actual combat rather than the backstories of the individual characters. While I have nothing against the decision to focus on character stories like they did in 2019, if you have watched any of the films we have suggested on this list so far, the more action-focused movie with the visually brighter filming techniques of the 1970s may be a welcome change. You can stream this version on Amazon Prime and YouTube if you have a premium subscription, and I do recommend you watch it if you do. Number 6, Devotion. The only war movie to be based around the Korean War in recent memory, 2022's Devotion tells the story of Jesse Brown, America's first black naval aviator. While the story largely centers around the racial prejudice Jesse experiences in 1950s America, the film is without a doubt a true war movie and a showcase of the importance of air power in American doctrine. We place this film after Midway for a couple of reasons, but one of them is that it follows the action of naval air power like Midway, but it focuses on the personal stories of a handful of pilots similar to the soldiers in Fury and Saving Private Ryan. While not as emotionally compelling as either of those two films regarding the horrors of warfare, it is still worth a watch if you have Paramount Plus and a couple hours of time. Number 7, We Were Soldiers. We Were Soldiers is about as accurate of a war movie as you can find. Centered around the Battle of Ia Drang in 1965, this movie tells the story of the 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore, played by Mel Gibson. After interviewing as many of the men involved in the fighting as possible, the real-life Hal Moore wrote a book about the battle with the assistance of Joe Galloway, a reporter who was with the 7th Cav during those fateful days. The movie was adapted from the book with only minor changes being made to better suit the film's runtime. It is a fantastic piece of cinema that manages to capture all the horror experienced by the soldiers who fought in the battle, as well as the outstanding amount of heroism they had to have. Number 8, Rescue Dawn. Rescue Dawn follows the real-life story of German-American pilot Dieter Dingler, as he is captured and eventually escapes North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces during the early days of the Vietnam War. While there have been several movies out there that show life as a POW, few are as visceral as Rescue Dawn. The movie opened to critical acclaim in 2006, but bombed at the box office, which is why many have never seen it. However, it is a stark reminder that casualties can occur as a result of maltreatment and neglect. The war in Vietnam is responsible for many missing in action and prisoner of war casualties, and the National League of Families POW MIA was founded in 1972 as a result of this. As of the time of writing this script, there are still 1,579 Americans missing and unaccounted for from the Vietnam War. It is a sad truth that not all stories turn out like Lieutenant Dingler's, but we should not forget about those who didn't. Number 9, Jarhead. Jarhead follows the service of a Marine squad during training and Operation Desert Storm. Thankfully, Desert Storm was a conflict that saw very few coalition casualties. However, while Rescue Dawn reminds us of those who went MIA or POW, Jarhead is a somber reminder that just because a service member makes it home doesn't mean the danger has passed. This is hammered home in the final 5 minutes of the film. The lesson is that adapting to civilian life is not as easy as just turning over the rifle and putting on a ball cap. Rates of self-harm are far higher in war veterans than the average demographic. Thankfully, that is a lesson we are starting to understand with increased clarity since the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan started over 20 years ago. Unfortunately, it is a lesson that we didn't learn in any of the other conflicts we've ever fought in. Number 10, Black Hawk Down. Earlier I said that We Were Soldiers is as accurate of a war film as you can find, but I think Black Hawk Down might actually have it beat. The film features an all-star cast that portrays one of the American military's worst days in excruciating detail. The 90s were an interesting time in American military history. We weren't at war with anyone, and the Soviet Union had just collapsed, so there didn't seem to be war on the horizon. However, even with the chances of an all-out war waning, our troops were still sent on various peacekeeping or humanitarian security missions across the world. And Black Hawk Down is a compelling reminder that we still lost brave men and women during this period. The movie itself is over 20 years old and is one of the finest examples of war cinema in recent history. Number 11, Lone Survivor. The latest and longest conflict America has been a direct combatant in was of course the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that lasted from 2001 to 2021. While Army and Marine infantry units did much of the fighting, it also saw a heavy use of special operations units. And this movie is about 4 such operators who are soon embroiled in a desperate bid for survival. The film is based on Navy SEAL Marcus Luttrell's real-life account of Operation Red Wing in 2005. In the end, only Luttrell lives to tell the story of his four-man team and the others who died trying to rescue him. While certain aspects of the story have been called into question over the years, the film still stands as a reminder that our secret soldiers are not invincible, and their sacrifices need to be remembered, even if the missions they went on cannot be told. Number 12, American Sniper. American Sniper tells the story of Chris Kyle, a Navy SEAL sniper that had the most recorded kills in American history. While much of the film is dedicated to what Kyle went through during his tours in the Middle East, the hardest hitting material comes when he returns home. Chief Kyle initially had a hard time adjusting to civilian life, but he managed to find peace and a purpose assisting veterans returning with physical and mental wounds. Unfortunately, one of these veterans would murder Chief Kyle during an outing to the shooting range. Actual footage of Chief Kyle's memorial service is shown at the end of the movie, and I have never once made it through without crying. Chris Kyle's sacrifice trying to help veterans like himself is truly inspiring, and its inclusion in a modern film is nothing if not extremely important and timely. And that is our list. We do hope that you found it useful and that you are able to enjoy time with your family this Memorial Day weekend. This was a bit of an emotionally heavy video for our channel, but we do think it is important to honor the memories of those we have lost. And while there is nothing wrong with having fun on Memorial Day with your family, please don't forget about the families who have one fewer member to celebrate with them. It is those fallen family members that allow us to have these days after all. And if anyone watching this video has lost family members in service to our country, please know that words cannot express the sorrow that I feel for you and your loss. Please know that our prayers are with you, and we hope that you're able to find some measure of peace this year. For Fairly Critical, I've been your host, Jacob. Thank you, and God bless you all.